Hello, my name's Lisa Diaz. I'm a mum from Wigan and also one of the founding members of Safe Ed for All. And for the best part of 2 years, we've been fighting tooth and nail for schools to be made safe. So here's a compilation of different people telling us why it's so important. Thanks for watching.
My name is Dr. Alex Huffman, and I'm a bioaerosol scientist and professor. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I've dedicated myself to research, teaching, and advocacy related to the airborne spread of COVID and its prevention. After all this time, it's hard to put into words how frustrating it is to see schools all over the world seemingly dismissing the spread of COVID amongst their students. Yet kids are getting sick at high and increasing rates in many places. Schools are letting the disease pass amongst students and back to their families, oftentimes without kids even knowing that they're sick or that they can be contagious. And huge numbers of kids are getting long COVID with symptoms lingering for months, and none of us know the real physiological ramifications of that into the future. The risks of COVID are real to our kids, and we've simply got to do better. It's also long since it's been crystal clear that the disease spreads primarily through the inhalation of aerosol particles and that are breathed out by infected people of all ages. What makes that frustrating and yet also so hopeful is that it means that we know the simple things that we can do in order to significantly slow down that spread. Encourage everyone to be vaccinated and boosted when possible. Yes, we should all continue to wash our hands and clean high-touch surfaces, but don't spend your extra energy there. Clean the air instead. Tight-fitting masks, good ventilation and room filtration, being careful at meal times when masks come off, moving activities outside, rapid COVID tests, and wise quarantine policies. We have all the tools at our disposal. It's critical for the lives of our children and our communities, but we've got to act. It's not too late. Spend some time soon to advocate to your local school leaders to encourage them to do everything in their power to take COVID prevention seriously.
Hi, it's Damo from Socialist Telly, of course lending my voice to support the call for mitigation measures to be put into place in an effective, meaningful way in our schools so we can actually start dealing with this COVID pandemic properly, because sadly that has not been the case so far. This pandemic has always been driven by airborne infection in the densest populated places in our society. And when you have, as is often the case, in excess of 1,000 people together in one building for at least 6 hours a day, how can that be anywhere other than our schools? Yet time after time, we saw schools being the last places to close, and the first to open. And as we've learned more about COVID and its transmissibility, it's become ever more obviously the case that children are affected, do pass it on, can suffer long-term with long COVID, do infect other age groups. The denials we've had from this Boris Johnson and the government have been shown to be a sham. Following the science, they always tell us, but as it has turned out, only the science they wanted to hear. Johnson wanted this virus to just pass through the population, to just take it on the chin as he watched COVID spread across Asia and Europe towards us last year. The JCVI, the scientific body advising his government, has supported that same herd immunity thinking and have decided our kids were the route to use. They've been guinea pigs for them, still advising against vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds, even as the government eventually decided to overrule that, thinking not of the safety of our children, of course, but the vulnerability of the economy at the time, also a result of their cack-handed handling of this pandemic. Now, we cannot beat this virus as other countries have without properly protecting our children, who can get sick, of whom well over 100 have now died out of 160,000 UK deaths overall to date. How many of those deaths could have been prevented if we took the spread in schools seriously? How many more will we lose? Which of your family members might that be? Have you got vulnerable family members? Do you have clinically vulnerable family members that you're concerned about? We need masks, vaccination, social distancing, a return to distance learning for those who want it or in fact need it. We need proper ventilation, especially at this time of year when cases worsen, and an open window is the last thing you want. Support Safe Ed for All as well and the tireless work this parent-led organisation does, and follow them on social media to keep updated. I'm immensely proud to host them on Socialist Telly, and we will continue to work together for as long as it takes for Johnson and his Tories to get real and stop playing fast and loose with our lives and those of our children.
Hello, my name is Colin Davis. I'm a professor of psychology, but I'm also the father of 2 school-aged children, both of whom contracted COVID before they had the opportunity to be vaccinated against it. This is a short message in support of Safe Ed for All and their campaign, and a message as well to our government and the Department for Education and head teachers. And I have 3 simple requests. First, can we please stop pretending that our children are not being infected en masse at school? We all know this is happening, so let's just drop the pretense. And second, can we concede that this is doing children harm? Certainly, most children who contract COVID will recover and will be fine, but nevertheless, there is a sizable minority who will go on to develop long COVID. And it's not fair to subject children to that outcome when we don't know yet what the long-term consequences are. It's also not fair to put children in a position where they may inadvertently infect other members of their household, including vulnerable people, parents, grandparents. If those people go on to be hospitalized and worse, then that is doing harm to those children. And third, can we please have a sensible discussion about the mitigations that we could put in place very quickly and easily? Reintroducing masks in classrooms, ventilating schools better, speeding up the vaccination program for young teenagers. We might even have a discussion about greater government investment to improve the safety of schools. None of these things are radical requests. So I hope that we can have a grown-up discussion about how we can protect our children better.
Given their tendency to not seroconvert after infection, and also given that they have an excellent immune response to the vaccine, I think kids should be prioritized for the SARS-CoV-2 vaccination, especially considering the number of healthy life years they stand to lose from infection.
My name's Dominic Minghella. I'm a writer, a campaigner, and a trustee of the UK's new COVID charity, COVID Aid. Let me ask you a question. Are there air purifiers in our schools? No. Are there effective mask policies in our school? Basically, no. Are there bubbles? Remember those? No. Are there options for medically vulnerable kids, or kids who live with vulnerable adults, like me, by the way, to learn from home? No. Are parents being threatened with off-rolling or legal sanctions if they don't send their kids to school? Yeah, you bet. And it mightn't be so bad if we'd vaccinated our youngsters, but we prevaricated for far too long. And then we promised to vaccinate year 7 to 11 by half term, but it didn't happen. Just didn't happen. We managed about 16%. And the results have been catastrophic. Kids have been catching COVID by the truckload. They brought it home to their parents and their grandparents, 10,000 of whom have died since school restarted, in a wave clearly driven by unvaccinated school-aged children. And the kids themselves, they're not magically invulnerable. They've been getting ill. Some have been dying, and others have wound up in hospital. If you ask a friend to guess how many kids have been hospitalized with COVID each month in the UK, they will gasp at the answer. It's 1,000 a month. Imagine being the parent. Imagine being the child. The fear in the pit of your stomach, the dread. This abject failure to mitigate and failure to vaccinate has caused suffering and death. And it's not just not good enough, it's a disaster. Never was a disaster so literally unmitigated as the disaster of this Johnson government's back-to-school policy of autumn 2021. And winter, as they say, is coming.
It is not acceptable to unnecessarily and knowingly expose children to increased risk of infection. And schools must have a multi-layered, scientifically recognized mitigation system to prevent this from happening.